Okay, hi everybody. It's time for a little, pro quickie time together. So I wanted to talk about dealing with parents who are upset and freaking out. And, I think that one of the here, I'll just make it all about me, shall we? Wait a minute. Sorry. Someday I will get a grip on this. Let's spotlight me. Can I spotlight me? Can't spotlight me, sorry. Oh man. Sorry. There we go. Oh, it won't let me. Okay. Anyway, I'll pin myself. So anyway, this is something, I'm gonna take the glasses off. Isn't it nice as this is casual? So of course, if a child engages in any kind of sexual behavior or you suspect abuse, you're gonna have to talk to the primary caregiver. And as you know, people come into these conversations and these situations with all kinds of baggage and history and misinformation. And it's terrifying for a lot of people to hear even that their kid just played doctor and had a little, you show me yours, I'll show you mine. And so it is one of the places where in your work, you need to tread incredibly lightly and be very careful how you have the conversations with the parents. So the good news is most of the time it's going to be things like playing doctor and, like a couple of times of checking each other out. There might be some touching out of curiosity, that kind of thing. Most of the time it's not going to be overtly something that's sexualized and something that to worry about. And of course, sometimes it is. And as y'all know, sometimes this stuff is kind of minor and adult-like, and sometimes it can be major and adult-like. And when you have these conversations with the parents, I'm just going to try to think about it in a couple of different ways. So if it is a situation where it was a you show me yours, I'll show you mine, the kids are the same age, developmentally typical, no red flags with either child, then the best practice is document, right? We all know the document, is to have the conversation with the parent. When you reach out to the parent, say, really carefully, like, hey, just wanted to let you know we had something happen today. All the kids are fine, your child's fine, but I just want to chat with you about it. So you can do that on the phone because you need to get them in and to see them, or you can just do it in person and say, hey, do you have a couple minutes? We had something happen. So your child is fine. You need to say your child is fine. And you need to be like me, hey, something happened, child's fine. And then when you talk with them, sorry, I have hair in my mouth. When you talk with them, the parents, right? So if it's a parent that is pretty sensitive, volatile, their child is a special snowflake, they're a little bit of a handful, then you need to have somebody else with you, another staff person with you. You also will need to plan what you're going to say. Generally speaking, what I encourage you to say is something along the lines of, this is what happened. The kids were out in the play area and your child and the other child were playing together, and they ended up looking at each other's private parts. So really clear, really specific. They looked at each other's private parts. They were playing a game, they were playing house, and they looked at each other's private parts. Then the next thing you'll say is, this is what we said to the kids. Not okay or safe to play this way. Then we talked to the kids individually, and just, what they said was, whatever they said, and then say, this is what we're doing now. We're going to make sure that they are, eyes on all the time. We've changed whatever you've changed to how you're monitoring the kids. This is what we will be doing. And then back to, you want to, actually, I'm sorry, I didn't say this. You want to start out with saying, we're not worried. This is really common and typical for kids. They're curious. They're, everybody's curious, about each other's private parts. So then you tell what happened, you tell your plan. And then you say, again, we're not worried about the kids. They both seem fine. Where they're okay. They seem totally happy, fine. Nobody was acting like they were like really hurt or scared, which is usually what happens. So we're going to do that. Write it down. Practice it a little bit. Be calm, because the parent might start to, this lid flip thing where we mimic each other. The parent might start to get and freaked out. Oftentimes that's because of their own history. Oftentimes because that's lack of information. So they think any kind of curiosity about privates is automatically sexually abusive. Totally not the case. So then as a parent, as you're interacting with that parent, you need to be calm and kind, answer their questions. If they start to get really anxious and big and kind of scaring you, I have a story about that, then you can say, you know what, let's all just take a break for a minute. I'm going to go get some water. I'm going to go get something, and bust out of just disrupt whatever's happening there. And then you've done your thing. You've done your thing. And again, remind them, this is what we're doing. We're keeping an eye on all the kids in a different way. Again, we're on this, we're on this, we're on this. And then you also need to say, we've had the same conversation with the other family, or we will be having the same conversation with the other family. And then they're going to want to know which kid it was. And then you can't tell them that because, can't tell them that. Everybody will gossip and they will find out. And then you just need to see what's going to happen. So sometimes people will pull their kids out of care because of this kind of thing, even something that is typical and common like this. So you need to be ready for that. But most of the time, if you're calm and careful and very clear and very succinct, you know how I say, don't say inappropriate, say not okay and not safe, because it's easier for them to hear. Same thing. Don't say they engaged in some inappropriate behavior. Just say they engaged some behavior that's not okay or safe. That's what we talked with them about. And then, so you're going to keep this in a really kind of chill space. So that's for the typical stuff. That's for the typical stuff. When the behavior is sexualized and you are thinking, like all the red flags, it's adult-like, your adult concern is high, it appears that one kid was more aggressive with another kid, all the red flags that I'm pretty sure y'all know. If there's some of those in place, then the conversation is going to look different. So as you know, if you suspect abuse, you're mandated reporter, so you need to report. And I'll set that over here for a sec. Anyway, so again, you're going to need to talk to the parents. So depending on when you talk to the kids, this is all, I feel like I'm just back up the track constantly with this. So first things first, the behavior happens. It's adult-like. Okay, so it's adult-like in some way. So okay, there's trouble here. So when you talk with the kids, separately, of course, one of the questions you need to ask is, have you ever played this way or done this with anybody else? And hear my tone, right? Played this way with anybody else? You can tell me, you won't be in trouble. And, we'll just make sure you need to get help if you need it, or the other person. And then you're going to see what they say. And they may say, yeah, my big cousin, he makes me do this, or they make me do that. And yes, with my cousin, yes, my teacher, uncle, whatever. So they may tell you because they trust you. And if you're just open to the conversation, so you're going to information gather. You do that with both kids. And then you'll have this information. So if it is a close family member, somebody who lives in their household, if it is somebody that's a sibling, if it's anybody that is very, kind of close to the child, and we're kind of rule of thumbing here, then you need to report it and do whatever they tell you to do, because they become the boss of this. So you report it first. And one of the questions you need to ask is it okay if I tell the parents? And they will tell you whether or not that is okay to do. And then oftentimes it will come, and I'm sure some of you have been through this, they'll come and they'll interview the child, with you where they are. The parents will not be notified because unfortunately the adults they'll protect the other adults. It's terrible. Kids do not lie about sexual abuse 4% of the time. They don't tell the truth. So that means 96% of the time they're telling the truth. So you need to believe the child. So that will happen. And then frankly, it can be a total shitstorm when this stuff comes out. So when you tell the parents, if you have permission to tell the parents, it's pretty much the same language. But what I would add is, it's like, we want to talk to you. Something happened today with your kiddo. Can you come and have a conversation with us today? It's really important. And then part of that conversation would be to say, I'm really sorry to have to tell you this. This is what happened. This is what we did. This is what we're required by law to do. And this is what we're planning to do in the future. We're here to support you. We're here to support you and your child and your child. And again, you're going to set the tone. And in this particular circumstance, if you absolutely need to have another person with you. And ideally, whoever caught them or saw the situation or was told or overheard or whatever, they're the person that is talking about what happened, because it's better to have that first person reporter. Again, going to get some major freak out. They might be really pissed that whatever happened on your watch happened. And, you can't control the kids 24/7. Like, you cannot be with them. It's impossible. And when this kind of thing happens, it can be really sneaky and happen pretty quickly. So that's kind of a middle ground thing. Now, sometimes it can be sexualized. It's one time, it's the first time you're concerned, but it's not reportable. So then you need to say, hey, this happened. This is what we're doing. We're worried. We're going to keep an eye out. We'll stay in communication. Another thing to ask is if something sexualized, happens, you can also say, hey, has this happened at your house? Have you heard about this before? Because you're data gathering, right? We're looking for that third strike, kind of third red flag, third moment, and see what they say, and then give them some tips for how to handle it at home, watching, making sure they're not with other kids and have opportunity to play with privates and check things out. So the thing about this is that, you can't control the adults and you can't really control the kids, right? But you can control yourself and make a container that's safe. One of the other things too, just be very careful to not be judgmental. And sometimes people put their kids in harm's way. So I think you may have heard my story about the 4-year-old girl who was up in the platform, and inviting the boys to lie down on top of her. She was doing that. She was rubbing her vulva on people's legs, primarily men. She moved her body in kind of a teenagery way. And I think she was actually she was kind of wearing teenagery clothes too, which is kind of a separate issue. But and then they come to find out that her mom was single, and no judgment about that, obviously, but she also had men in and out of the house, and the girl was probably exposed to sexual activity, the mom engaging in sexual activity. Who knows what was happening with these men that she was having in and out of the house. So, why am I telling you that? So that's a pretty extreme example. And that in that circumstance, when CPS was called, they interviewed the child at school, and they did not tell the mom, because the mom had the potential to, just not make this okay for the child, like interrupt and that kind of thing. I'm sorry, I totally lost my train. Anybody know why I was telling you that? I'm open. Thoughts? Anybody? Anyway, so just back to so if it gets even harder, so if it's violent, the child is clearly hurt, it is a big deal, then that's going to be even harder. And one of the things that is really important, especially if it's not an immediate family, if the child says the father does this to them, and then the father comes into this scene, that should not happen. So if the child says mother, father, grandparent, any parent, any grandparent, anybody right in the household, then you cannot talk to the household. You need to go straight to getting help. So when you talk with them about this, you just should know that oftentimes when this happens, they will pull the kid out of care. You can't do anything about that. They will sometimes they'll accuse you of causing the problem, that it's not happening at home, that it's somebody that's working there, like any number of things that can happen there. And again, same rules. And I think the other thing with that kind of egregious situation, you have the child that might have been assaulted and abused, but then you have the other child who maybe did that behavior with that kid. And I think we sometimes forget, especially parents, forget that if it's a pair of 7-year-olds, they're children. And even the child that was the aggressor They're 7. And if a child is doing that, then usually there's something else going on in their household, and that child might be being abused as well. It's very hard when you're, again, it's very hard for parents to see that, like, this child needs help. Yes, your child needs help, but this child needs help too. And I just had a quickie consultation with a couple, and they had their 10-year-old niece come into their care as a kind of as a surprise. So they have 3, 4, I don't know, they had too many children as far as I'm concerned, but they had an 8-year-old. I know, I'm like, I'm one and done. How can you have 4? So the 10-year-old niece came into the family, 8-year-old just turned, they were like 8, 10, and 8 sibling cousins, and then there are 2 little cousins, so they're 3, and I don't, anyway, too many of them, they're under the age of 5. So this gal is there for 2 days, and within that 2 days, she and her cousin, the 7-year-old or 8-year-old, engaged in some sexual play, and that the son was acting weird, and the mom said, hey, what's happened? What's going on? You can tell me. And he was tearful and afraid. And he told her that they had been looking at each other's privates. And so it turned out that even though they didn't see each other very frequently, every time they had been together over the last year, this had happened. And so, of course, this couple is like freaking out about this happening immediately. But one of the things that was so great about them is that they had her best interests at heart. Yes, they were worried about their kiddo, and they were worried about her. And so we were able to have this conversation about, he's fine. He seemed totally fine. She seemed okay, probably relieved to have this out in the open. And then they were willing to keep her in the household and for a few weeks to see what was happening and make sure she got help if she needed it. And, this is not, honestly, this is kind of not typical. They're in, usually the parent, they were like, we're going to make her go to her grandparents, but she's not safe there. She can't be with her father. She can't be with her mother. Where's she going to go? And so they were able to keep her in their household. So in your work, you might have this kid who's the aggressor. So you also need to gather around the aggressor kiddo and help their family, make sure their family has help for the child. If Child Protective Services is involved, then they will get help usually. Sometimes it doesn't happen. So you can be a space of safety for the kiddo and a space of safety and support for that family. Now, you cannot tell who was the aggressor. You can't give that information. It's private, which gets complicated. But like I said, gossip, they'll sort it out. And so the last thing I just want to say is that with both kids in particular, and with both kids, you need to treat them as though they are still who they are before any of this happened. Same rules, and well, rules might need to change a little bit, but same interactions with them, maybe a little extra for that kiddo that was the aggressor. So don't treat them differently because it's just not going to help them. And then the last thing about this is that kids who engage in sexual behavior like this, that is potentially abusive or sexualized, or who are that kind of more aggressive child, when they get therapy and help and support, usually, even if it's really awful stuff that's going on for the kiddo, usually they recover within a year, and they go with the right kind of therapy, and they go on to live healthy, happy lives. So, one of the things I love about working with folks like you who work with kids is that I get to impact all these kids' lives. Like, I'm hoping I'm empowering you to say, that's not okay. Let's get that kid help, instead of doing the old, I don't know. I don't want anybody to get uncomfortable or in trouble, because that's not helping anybody. And kids need people like you who are informed and are willing to step up and put up with some crap sometimes from, adults, because adults. So that is my quick how to handle parents. Bottom line, keep it really chill, use small words, be very careful about, this is what happened, this is what we did, this is what we're doing, and this is what we will be doing in the future. So you're going to spell it out for them. And of course, document, and then write it out, And remember, the most important person in the room, people in the room, generally speaking, is the kid or the kids. They're the most important people in the room. The adults are going to do what the adults are going to do. I was actually in somewhere in the South, and I was working with a Boys and Girls Club, and we were doing this training. It was part of it was how to deal with the upset parents or upset adults. And the boss man, he said, "Yeah," he said, I had this situation, and I think it was something with older kids that was sexually inappropriate, sexual harassment or some kind of touch or something like that. And so the dad came in to have the conversation, and the Boys and Girls Club person had another person with them, which was good. And this guy was big, and he started out sitting down, and he got bigger and bigger and louder, and potentially like was going to smack folks around. And they were able to get him calmed down. They stepped away. And so they had the skills in place to keep that on, to help bring that down. So that's not typical, but you just got to be ready for anything, because you can't tell. Because the last thing is people come into this with their own abuse histories, right? They're terrified. And here's this thing that's happened to their kid. And so now their stuff comes up, and you just can't know. So of course, as always, it's better to be kind and patient and breathe. And then you can have your debrief and freak out later. Okay, so that's me. Fun times. Any clarifications, thoughts? Have you ever done this? And I've only got the two of you. What are you thinking?
I like what you said about like the summary, using very chill, using simple language, and the documentation I think is super important, because at least here in Mexico, sometimes parents can, you can get in trouble for having been the one that told them. They get mad at you, right? And there can even be legal interventions against you for lying or making up, or I don't know how you call it in the US, but it's like image damage.
Yeah, that's essentially it. Yeah.
So they can say that you are damaging their image, and you can get sued for that.
Wow.
So documentation, I think, is super, super important for self-protection.
No matter where you are, Yeah, I had the gal that I was making photocopies for my sexual behavior class, and she with a handout, and she's making copies to advertise her childcare. And I said, of course, I'm like, hey, do you want this? This is what I do. And she said, sure. And she looks at it, and she said, can I tell you what happened to me? And I said, of course. And so she had run a childcare for 15 years, and she had a kiddo in her care, a little girl who was exhibiting adult-like sexual behaviors, and she wouldn't stop. And so it wasn't enough that it was reportable, but it was enough that it was a problem. And she chose not to report it. I don't remember what she was doing exactly. And so she said, she can't be in care here anymore. And the parents turned around and reported her to Child Protective Services, and they came in, they shut her down. And it took a year for her to, everything to go through the court system. And she finally had her hearing, and she won. She prevailed because she documented. And so, I want kids to be safe, and I want you to be safe too, from that kind of nonsense, right? From that kind of nonsense. And I know it happens, right? I know it happens, but it's just safer for you to have a system of documentation. So, Jamie, is that right?
Yeah.
Rhymes with, what are you thinking?
Sorry, I jumped in late. So I didn't catch the front end, but yeah, after a lot of years working in this field, I've dealt with angry parents, and I can definitely agree that keeping it simple, documenting, chill, kind of approach, and just being very matter of fact really does help. And then, yes, bringing in somebody, your parents, after you've served them and their families and their kids, and you've just engaged with them in normal, non-stressful, times, their demeanor. So
Mhm.
ensuring that you have a second person with you is definitely important. So I agree with everything you said.
Anything to add? Is there anything you've done that has made a difference?
No, not really. I mean, I oversee all of our early learning sites. So we serve, kids that are infant, taught, and preschool.
Mhm.
And so, I think probably 99% of the, sexual behavior we've, witnessed and, come across is appropriate. It's just
Yeah.
typical age appropriate kids, you want to see mine, I'll show me yours
Right. Right.
kind of,
Yeah.
behavior. So, we did have just, I don't know, last year probably, I oversee all 6 of our sites now,
Mhm.
but at one point in time, I oversaw one of them. And I had documented probably, I don't know, 8 years ago, an incident that had taken place outside, kids showing each other privates behind the tree. And now, 7 years later, I'm getting a phone call from a caseworker.
Oh,
And, saying, I have a document on file from, this happening at your facility years ago. And I remember doing it. I was there. I was the supervisor at the time. So yes, documenting. You never know, what, even if it's, in our eyes, probably pretty innocent, because it's typical behavior. But if you only have the kid for a short chunk of time, you don't get to see if this is a habitual,
Mhm.
thing that they're
Mhm.
doing. And
Mhm. Mhm.
it sounded like it was. So, documenting is definitely important.
It is a very good thing. It is a very good thing. And you help save that child, right? That's the other thing, right? When you do that, you're helping the child, you're helping protecting yourself, but you're helping the child.
Yes.
Where are you?
I work for the Boys and Girls Club.
Oh, here in
Yep.
Seattle or elsewhere?
Where's that? What's that?
Where are you? What town are you in? City are you in?
Pasco,
Pasco.
Pasco,
Oh, cool.
Washington. So
Yeah. Okay.
Tri-Cities.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yes, you're Washingtonian.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that, I know, I mean, I work for the Air Force and I shouldn't be telling tales, but I'm like, people, right? This needs to be easy and it needs to be in one spot, but they're so overwhelmed and they do an okay job of it. But it is something that should be, everybody should know. Every single person should know. I think it should be revisited once a year, when people are on board, this is how we do this. But one other thing I was thinking about, and you were talking about how, we know the parents. One thing that goes a long way to increasing rapport with parents is for everybody to greet and say, hey, it's good to see you. How was your day? What's going on this weekend? And if you can hit every parent every day, if y'all, like, you might even need to divide and conquer, right? And so then the staff develops a relationship. And so then when something goes sideways, anything goes sideways, they already feel welcome and included, and like their child's important to them and they're important. I think that's a little Adlerian psychology there. And it's not hard. It's not hard. And I worked for before and after school care when I was in college. And boy, I could never do it now because boy, howdy, was it footloose and fancy free there. But we had really good relationships with the parents because we saw them and we chatted with them. And then when something was up, it was easier. And I know y'all are busy and I know how crazy it can be and chaotic. So definitely for everybody, if you have a kiddo that is a handful, target that parent. Make extra effort with that parent because you can smell it, right? Who's trouble. I mean, after however many years, like, all right, right? And then you'll know, okay, let's make an extra effort to connect with this family because that little squirrel, it's gonna be some trouble. Okay, so I'm gonna stop recording. So thank you, listeners. You two can stay, hang on. So need training, you know where I am, respond to my email, super fun. I can do it in person now. Okay.
Awesome.
Yay.